The story opens in 2049, 30 years after the events of the first film, and on-screen text states that the Tyrell Corporation has collapsed decades before, in the wake of violent revolts involving their Nexus 6 through -8 replicants, forcing the company into bankruptcy. After the world's ecosystems collapsed in the mid-2020s, famine swept the Earth, killing millions. With his invention of synthetic farming, a wealthy businessman named Neander Wallace ended food shortages and acquired Tyrell's remaining assets to form his own corporation. The Wallace Company has reinvigorated the replicant industry by mass-producing the Nexus 9 replicants, a new generation of artificial humans with modified behavior to make them more obedient than the older models. These replicants have implanted memories and open-ended lifespans, and are still used for slave labor on the off-world colonies, the Moon, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, etc. But some are also used as Blade Runner units, hunting down and retiring the few remaining older model replicants that are still at large. In the opening scene, Agent K, one of these Nexus 9 replicants, travels to a protein farm outside Los Angeles in his flying spinner vehicle, where he has tracked down an older model replicant called Sapper Morton, who is part of a group of Series 8 replicants that have gone out of control. Morton tries to fool K by playing dumb, but his satchel betrays that he is a combat model from the Battle of Calanth. After a brief but violent fight, Morton chastises K for killing his own kind and doing the humans' dirty jobs because he has never witnessed the kind of miracle that he has. K retires him and takes his eye for identification. He is just ready to leave when he notices a flower placed beside a dead tree in the desolate landscape next to the farm. The tree is supported by wires, so someone has gone through some lengths to preserve it. This prompts him to thoroughly scan the area, which reveals a chest buried in the ground under the tree. He requests his office to send a forensic team to unearth it. K returns to the LAPD office, where he undergoes a standard baseline test for replicants and passes it. He then goes home to his apartment in a seedy area of town, enduring a lot of abuse from neighbors for being a skinjaw. He spends his time at home with a holographic woman named Joy, a futuristic form of AI, and has apparently formed a deep bond with her, despite the fact that they cannot physically interact. For this reason, he has bought her a mobile hologram projector which allows him to free her program from its home-based console. He can now take Joy outside on the top of his apartment building in the pouring rain, and it also allows her program to touch objects. Joy is extremely happy, but K is called back to the station before they can experiment with Joy's new capabilities any further. Downtown, the forensics team has discovered that the chest contains a human skeleton and a lock of hair. They belong to a female who most likely had complications during childbirth 30 years before. Superficial cuts in the bones suggest an emergency cesarean section as the cause of death. Upon closer inspection, K locates a serial number engraved on one of the woman's bones, indicating that the skeleton wasn't from a human, but a replicant female. The identification causes quite a stir since replicants were previously unable to reproduce. K's superior, Lieutenant Joshi, reminds him that if the public knew that the line that separates humans from replicants is blurring or disappearing altogether, it would tear apart what remains of civilization. She commands the team to destroy the evidence and orders K to burn down the farm, track down the replicant child, and retire it, despite the mixed feelings he may have about retiring something that was born and has a soul. Before leaving, K takes some of the female replicant's hair. K goes to the Wallace Company to inquire about the serial number and hair of the female replicant. It is housed in the old Tyrell pyramid, although now much more austerely lit. A clerk tells him that the number belongs to an older model replicant. Information may be hard to find, given the fact that an EMP event called the Blackout in 2022 destroyed almost every digital file the company had before that date. All that remains is some raw hard copy data, but fortunately, there appears to be something left. K is helped by a replicant woman called Love, who gives him access to what appears to be an old memory file containing an audio recording. It belonged to an experimental replicant named Rachel, who went missing 30 years before. She can be heard talking to a Blade Runner called Rick Deckard. K detects a very strong connection between the two. Love thanks K for finally being able to close the case on Rachel. K does some research on Deckard and finds his old colleague Gaff, who is now living in a retirement home. Gaff tells him that Deckard and Rachel fell in love and eloped. K asks if Gaff knew that Deckard would one day leave society. Gaff confirms, saying that there was something in Deckard's eyes that told him he was finished hunting replicants. Love reports what she has learned to Wallace, who is blind but can see with the help of small drones. He is just witnessing the activation of a new female replicant, which looks a lot like a crude birthing from a gestation bag. He muses sympathetically to his creation how he was able to make new replicants who have helped colonize 9 worlds. Yet he shares his frustration about that small number, stating that humanity should own the stars. He poses that every leap of civilization was done with the aid of a disposable workforce, and replicants have replaced slaves in that matter, but his production capacity for them is limited. He laments that the female replicant cannot bear children, and carelessly slashes the woman's abdomen. In order to conquer the stars, millions more replicants will be necessary, but he cannot get them to procreate. Despite all his efforts, Tyrell obviously learned how to do this, but this technique was lost, and the only way to learn Tyrell's secrets is to find Rachel's child. He commands Love, who is emotionally shaken by his actions but remains obedient, to obtain Rachel's remains and follow Kay to locate the child. Meanwhile, Kay is walking through the city's entertainment district to buy dinner, where a mysteriously cloaked woman commands 3 replicant prostitutes to find out what he knows. One of them, Mariette, tries to seduce him for sex, but noticing he carries a holographic projector, she figures that he is not into real girls and leaves. In the meantime, Love has entered the police station to retrieve Rachel's remains, coldly killing the forensic agent who discovers her doing it. Kay returns to Sapper's farm and locates a hidden box containing a baby sock and a picture of another woman holding the baby in front of the tree, implying that Sapper and several other replicants have been protecting Rachel's secret for decades. He also finds a date carved into the bottom of the tree, 6/10/21, which visibly upsets him. He burns the farm and returns to Los Angeles, reporting his findings to Joshi. She tells him about the death of their forensic colleague and the disappearance of Rachel's remains, and asks him about his most precious childhood memory. Even though he knows that it must be an implanted one, Kay says that he clearly remembers being chased through an old factory as a kid by a group of older boys. They wanted to take away his wooden carving of a horse, so he hid it inside an old furnace. Kay remembers that the horse had a date on it, the exact same date that was carved into the tree, a fact that he doesn't share with Joshi. Joshi suggests he try the DNA bank to identify the child. Assuming that the date carved in the tree and the horse is meant to be a date of birth, Kay starts to dig into the DNA bank to find someone born on June 10, 2021. Again, only raw data remains, but he finds records of 2 children born that day, a boy and a girl. They have the same DNA, which is an impossibility. Only identical twins can have the same DNA, and they should have the same gender. The DNA data came from an orphanage outside the city where the girl later died from a genetic disease, so Kay suspects that the data from the girl is a fake copy of the other. He theorizes that the surviving boy may have been hidden by the replicants in the orphanage, which is in the ruins of San Diego. He travels there in his spinner, but is shot down by a tribe of feral scavengers who live among the ruins of a massive old ship-breaking yard. They try to attack him, but Love, who is keeping an eye on him from above through remote drone surveillance, uses precision bombs to repel them. After repairing the damage to his spinner, Kay proceeds to the orphanage, an old, overturned telescope dish, where the caretaker is clearly using the children as cheap laborers. He coerces the man into showing him the old administrative files, but finds that the sections he is looking for have been completely torn out. While exiting, he notices how familiar the surroundings feel to him. He walks deeper into the ship section, and is shocked to find the location and the furnace from his memory. The wooden horse is still hidden inside it. Kay returns to the LAPD station in an upset state for another baseline test, which does not go smoothly. Not knowing what to make of the revelation, he returns home. Joy is convinced that this means that his childhood memory is real, and Kay is Rachel's son, suggesting he was born instead of manufactured, and that he has a soul, as opposed to other replicants who are thought to be soulless and thus inferior to humans. She thinks he deserves a human name, and starts to call him Joe. Kay is still not convinced that the memory is real, so Joy suggests that he should contact an expert on implanted memories. Kay arrives at the lab of Dr. Anna Stelline, a freelance designer who creates memory implants for Wallace's replicants. Dr. Stelline is happy to see someone, being kept inside a dome at all times since she suffers from a compromised immune system and can't be exposed to other people. Her parents left Earth for one of the off-world colonies, but she wasn't allowed to come along because of her disease. Her youth was lonely, but this caused her imagination to flourish, making her one of the best creators of artificial memories, since using real memories is illegal. Kay asks how fake memories can be discerned from real ones. Dr. Stelline says that fake memories tend to be too detailed, since real memories are messy as they tend to reflect an emotional rather than a photographic recollection. But a good fabricated memory always contains something personal of the artist. Kay asks her to take a look at his memory and give her thoughts. A special device allows Dr. Stelline to see the memory inside his head. Overcome by emotion, she says that someone has lived this. Kay leaves in a fit of anger and confusion. As he goes outside, he is apprehended by the police. Kay is confronted by an angered Joshi for hanging around a facility where he has no business being, and failing his last baseline test, which is normally reason for immediate retirement. Kay tells her that he is in his current state because he succeeded in his mission. He has killed Rachel's offspring, who was so well hidden that even the man didn't know who he was. Joshi agrees that this is a valid reason for a failed baseline test, so she suspends him, giving him 48 hours to get his emotions under control because his next baseline test will be out of her control. Going home, he finds Mariette in his room. Joy reassures him that this is her doing because she needs Mariette for something. She synchronizes her holographic program with Mariette, so she is able to steer Mariette's body and make love to Kay the next morning. Kay takes a shower and clearly feels awkward about the unexpected threesome, while Mariette places a tracking device in his coat. As she notices the wooden horse, Joy appears and tells Mariette to leave. Mariette scoffs that, having been inside Joy's consciousness, she noticed that not much was there, showing that replicants are not above feelings of superiority either. Kay tells Joy that people will be coming for him, so he needs to go. Joy insists that he take her and delete her program from the home-based projector completely, so that her memory files cannot be used to find him. Kay is reluctant, as transferring her solely to the mobile projector puts her at risk of being lost if it gets damaged, but he ultimately agrees. He destroys the antenna in the projector so that she cannot be moved to another device, thereby also removing any chance of tracking it. Love, who is monitoring the position of the projector, is no longer able to track Kay. Kay takes the wooden horse to a specialist, Doc Badger, who finds traces of radioactive tritium in the wood. They deduce that there is only one area nearby that can account for the type of wood in such high radiation reading. Kay leaves the city, taking care not to be noticed. Kay arrives in the abandoned ruins of Las Vegas and finds a beehive, indicating that there must be people in the abandoned area. He enters a deserted hotel, casino, and judging by the booby traps, he figures he is in the right place. It doesn't take long for Deckard to show himself, keeping Kay at gunpoint in the supposition that he is there to kill him. They fight for a while before Deckard becomes convinced that Kay is only there for answers, so he invites him for a drink. In the meanwhile, Love has arrived at Kay's apartment, disappointed to find that he is gone and that the mobile projector can no longer be tracked. She proceeds to the police station, asking Joshi to cooperate and tell her where Kay is. Joshi refuses, telling her that Kay succeeded and fled after killing the replicant child. Love's initially friendly disposition changes drastically, hissing in anger that they killed a wonder out of fear for a change that is inevitable anyway. She tortures Joshi for information, but to no avail. Love tells Joshi that contrary to what she may believe, replicants are capable of lying, so Kay may not have told her the truth. Getting no more cooperation, Love kills Joshi and uses her computer to locate Kay in Las Vegas. Deckard tells Kay that Las Vegas used to be a sprawling center of amusement, until a dirty bomb made it unlivable for decades. After initial hesitation, he confirms that Rachel was pregnant, but he has never seen the child, nor does he know its whereabouts. Deckard was still actively hunted, so out of love for her and the child, he left a still pregnant Rachel in the care of people who could protect her. He taught the other replicants how to scramble records and cover their tracks. But after the blackout, so much information was lost that not even Deckard could have found the child if he wanted to. He never tried, hoping that his ignorance was the best way to keep everyone safe. If the wrong people had followed him, the child would be dissected. Sometimes to love someone, you've got to be a stranger. Deckard is done answering questions about this painful subject. After a while, Deckard notices that someone has entered the area. Convinced that Kay has been followed, they proceed to Deckard's spinner to flee, but a rocket grenade destroys the spinner and incapacitates both Deckard and Kay. Love enters with a few henchmen, and although Kay dispatches some of them, Love fights back and badly injures him. She notices Kay's mobile projector and destroys it, effectively killing Joy to Kay's anguish. Leaving him for dead, she kidnaps Deckard and takes him back to Wallace. Fading in and out of consciousness for a time, Kay's wounds are tended by a group of replicants including Mariette, who have found him through her tracker. When he finally wakes up, he learns they are part of a replicant freedom movement. Their leader, Freysa, is the woman in the picture holding Rachel's baby, and the one who sent Mariette onto Kay. She is an old battle comrade of Sapper from Calantha, and she reveals how she was there when the living miracle of Rachel's child was born. Rachel herself died in childbirth, so the rebellious replicants went to great lengths to hide the baby and keep it a secret. Sapper actually died to protect it, because if replicants could have children, the human world could no longer deny them their rights and freedoms. So they have built an army for the coming revolution. No individual, Kay, Freysa, or Deckard, is more important than this cause, and dying for it is the most human thing they can do. Since Deckard is in Wallace's hands now, Kay needs to kill him to prevent Deckard from giving information that will lead them to Freysa. In fact, she is convinced that Deckard would happily sacrifice his life for his daughter, who will be shown to the world and lead their army when the time is right. Kay gets confused, stating that the lost child was a boy, since he found evidence that a girl died in the orphanage and a boy was hidden there. Freysa answers enigmatically that this is just a piece of the puzzle, and that she witnessed the girl being born. Thinking back on all he has discovered so far, Kay is flooded with a series of memories. Dr. Anna Stelline saying how she always put something of herself into her work, her emotional response to his memory, stating that it was real and not fabricated. The DNA readouts, one real, one fake. Deckard telling him how he taught the replicants to scramble records and cover their tracks, the memory of the child hiding the wooden horse. Suddenly, all the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Dr. Stelline is Rachel and Deckard's lost daughter. The implanted memory about the wooden horse was not fabricated because it was hers, and she put it in other replicants as well. Freysa notes Kay's apprehension. Realizing that he believed he was Deckard's and Rachel's child, she comforts him by saying that every replicant wishes they were, and that it is the reason they believe. At the Wallace Company, Deckard wakes up inside Wallace's office, who is happy to finally meet him. He shows him Rachel's skull, calling it the lock and Deckard the key to unraveling the mystery of replicant reproduction. However, it has been insufficient, and he really needs Deckard's child to create his self-perpetuating army of slaves. He starts an audio playback of Deckard's first conversation with Rachel, which emotionally affects him. Wallace insinuates that their instant connection wasn't coincidence. Their first meeting was set up from the beginning, with the intention that they would end up together and reproduce, either because Deckard himself is a replicant, or because Rachel was designed to his preferences with mathematical precision. Wallace praises Deckard for keeping himself empty of the information that could lead them to the child, but he can still name the people who helped him and the places they visited. He tries to entice Deckard with something that he really covets. A woman walks in from the shadows, and she appears to be an exact copy of Rachel as she appeared to Deckard 30 years ago, down to the clothing and hairstyle she wore. Deckard is shocked and moved, but through the emotional anguish, and against all his instincts, he ultimately dismisses this Rachel as a fake, stating that the real one had green eyes. Frustrated by his failure, Wallace immediately has Love execute the fake Rachel. He orders Love to take Deckard to one of the off-world colonies, where they have people experienced in torture with the means to make him talk. Kay finds himself back in, observing a giant three-dimensional ad for the Joy hologram with great sorrow, knowing that the joy he loved is gone forever. In the meanwhile, Love takes off with a handcuffed Deckard in a spinner with 2 escorting vehicles, and flies along the last shoreline. Kay catches up, using his spinner to destroy the escorts and blow Love's vehicle from the sky, forcing it to crash onto the beach. Kay lands next to it, and after an exchange of gunshots that kills the pilots, he gets into a fight with Love. He receives severe wounds from Love's relentless punches and knife, and Love leaves him for dead. She re-enters the vehicle, trying to free Deckard from his cuffs as the spinner is being dragged into the sea by tidal waves. But then Kay enters. He fights with Love and pushes her down underwater with all of his power, finally drowning the life out of her. He manages to release Deckard just before the vehicle sinks completely. Deckard says that he should have let him die. Kay states that he did. The world will believe that Deckard went down with the vehicle. Kay takes Deckard to Dr. Stelline's office. He tells him he is free to meet his daughter now, and that all his best memories are hers. Deckard asks him, "Why? Who am I to you?" Kay simply urges him to enter the office. As Deckard goes in and meets his unsuspecting daughter, who is enjoying a cloud of artificial snow, Kay lays down on the steps outside, slowly succumbing to his wounds. He looks at the real snow falling down, apparently at peace with the part he played.